he's going to have this.
Sorry, we're a little late getting this recording started. We had some technical problems earlier, but I'm going to try to record as much of this as I can.
Now, come on. So he's a base of a 1. He's within 2 hexes, so there's no loss, there's no negative for range, but he is suppressed. But the man moved in his line of sight, so it's going to be a +1, -1 for being suppressed, but he gets a +1 back because the German squad moved in the open ground in his line of sight. So that being said, the net fire is going to be 1 minus 1 plus 1 will be a 0. Increase this here. So that's going to be a net of a 1. It's going to be placed on that gentleman. Because he fired in line of sight, the Americans will lose their concealment. So Murphy's concealment is gone, as well as the concealment here for the second squad, because they were both within 3 when they fired of an enemy unit in their line of sight. At the top of the screen,
these are the concealment markers.
First squad, first platoon for the American is going to fire at the German squad that moved out on the hilltop. He's a base of a 1. It's within 2 hexes, so it's close range. He did move in the open. So that's going to be a 1 plus 1 because he moved in the open at close range. So that's going to be a net of a 2. He will lose his concealment because he fired within 3 of the enemy unit. So the American now has reacted, and he's done. He's going to call for reaction from the German player. The German player no longer has anything to activate, so he's going to pass. So that ends the activation phase. So now we go to the fire resolution phase. So the first one will resolve. Oh, sorry guys, I'm not paying much attention to what's going up here. So to answer the first question, does the terrain, the woods, fill up the full hex for line of sight purposes? For woods hex, it covers everything within the hex except for hex sides and vertices.
Okay.
So you can sight down a hex side and a vertice. Anything, any line of sight that passes within a woods hex is blocked. To answer, so Murphy to H9, which is contains the German 3rd Squad, that's not blocked, so he can't see that. All right, so we're going to go now and resolve fire, and we'll start the top to bottom. So I'll get the terrain track. I'll get the CRT here. Well, I'm not going to use the CRT. It blocks everything out. So basically, it works this way. We're going to roll a single-sided die for this attack. We're going to add 2 because it's a black number. If the number were red, you would subtract it from the die. So we're going to resolve the fire against the German 2nd Squad. So I'll roll the die. It's a 4. 4 plus 2 is a 6. That equals the cohesion, but it's not greater than. So that fire had no effect on that unit. So we'll go to the next one, which is the German 3rd Squad. We're going to roll another die, and it's a 3. 3 plus 1 is a 4. The Americans are shooting real poorly here, so there's no effect on that German unit. Under Coke, it's a 0. We're going to roll another die. It's also a 4, so it's no effect on Coke. So the American fire so far was not very effective. We're going to resolve the German fire And we'll start at the top. So the third squad and Mr. Murphy have a -3. We're going to roll a die. It's a 4. 4 minus 3 is a 1. Obviously, that's not greater than the 6. Now, the die roll modifier goes against the best combat unit in the hex. Murphy is not a combat unit. It's considered a non-combat because it's a leader. So we're going to compare this to the 6. So obviously there is no effect. I see a question. One die even though we're multiple units. Okay. You only roll one die for each die roll modifier marker.
Okay.
Now, for example, you may have 4 die roll modifier markers on one hex. You would roll 4 die, 1 for each die roll modifier on that hex. In that case, where it's all on a single hex, you would only take the single most detrimental die roll, net die roll, and you would ignore all the others. All right, small arms fire generally will target, okay, when you conduct small arms fire and place a small arms die roll modifier in the hex, it affects everybody in the hex at the time of fire. So it's feasible that I may be fired on in a hex, and then I move. And when I move, I'm going to take that die roll modifier with me, that marker, because that means that the enemy is tracking my movement as I go. If I move into another hex with another friendly unit, the fire on the original unit would not affect the final hex because that unit wasn't in the hex at the time of fire. That help? So we're going to resolve the fire against Mr. Murphy.
Ouch.
So I'm going to roll a die.
It's a 10.
It's a 10. 10 minus 3 is a 7. The best combat unit is a 6. But because Murphy's in the hex, because his cohesion is greater than the unit, the combat unit, he's going to get to help that guy. So it's a 6 plus 1 for Murphy is a 7, so there's no effect in this particular case. Now we resolve the mortar fire against the machine gun that's on the hill. So we have 2 zeros. So I'm going to roll 2 die. I'm going to hit the multiple die. And the first 2 die is going to be 1 die roll for each marker. So we have a 4 and a 2. Again, 4 plus 0 is a 4. That's not greater than the 6. 2 plus 0 is not greater than the 6. So we're done. So those go away. Well, they don't go away at this time. So now we have the last unit at the bottom. We're going to roll for it. That's a 10. 10 minus 3 is a 7. So that is greater than the cohesion of the
six here.
squad. So that squad is going to disrupt.
Okay.
There's no close combat here. In other words, there's no units in an enemy hex at this time. So we're now going to go to the indirect fire adjustment phase. So the German player has the option to continue this mortar fire against the machine gun, or he can move it to any hex within 2 and attempt to bring in the mortar fire again. It's only capable, he can only extend the mortar fire 1 time, and he has to be able to do it on a die roll of 5 or, sorry, he can extend it on a die roll of 5 or less. So the German player decides that he wants to extend this fire against this machine gun, so he's going to have to roll a 5 or less, and he rolls a 6. So the mortar fire, they were out of ammo or for whatever reason, the mortar fire did not continue. So we're going to remove these markers.
Okay.
And we're going to move those to the game track.
There's the game track.
In the box that says mortar support restore. So we're going to have to, at the end of next game turn, I will get the opportunity to roll, and if I'm less than equal to, I think it's, I'm less than equal to a 4 for 80 millimeter, I get the mortar back. But right now, it's not available. So we're through with this particular turn. So we now are going to go to the game track. We're going to roll a die to see how much time has lapsed.
Okay, this track here.
So it's 3. You go to the
Roll
game
to
track to 3. So that means 2 minutes has lapsed.
2 minutes. There we are.
So we're now at the end of the first turn. So I'll take any questions at this juncture.
Hey, Mike, could you explain a little bit about the sequence of play? I didn't quite follow some of that. It was really fast at the beginning. Can you just walk us through the sequence of play?
Let me pull it up and I can be specific.
I don't think it's in the module here. I think he's got it on his own charts.
All right, the sequence of play, the very first thing you do is you would roll for reinforcements. You roll a single die. If the die roll is a 1, the German gets a reinforcement, and those are generally pre-designated in each mission. If you roll a 0, the American would receive reinforcement. The first thing you do, or the second thing you would do after the reinforcements of turn is you have an initiative. Each player rolls a die. The player with the highest die will have the initiative. Most missions, one player or the other will have an initiative die roll. For example, typically, and as in this mission, the German player, as the attacker, will have a +2 on his die roll. This can vary. Now, he only has a +2 if he had the initiative on the previous game turn. If the American wins the initiative, he has no modifier, so he's never going to be greater than 0. Once the initiative is determined, the player wins the initiative begins the activation phase. First thing you do in the activation is see if you can do a combined activation. If you can't, you activate one platoon at a time. So in this particular case, normally you're going to activate a platoon, you're going to move and fire those units, and then you're going to call from reaction from the enemy player. Any enemy unit that had line of sight to one of the activated platoon's units that conducted an action in his line of sight can now activate and react and fire or move. His maneuver will be a little bit restricted because he's reacting, but other than that, he can fire normally. Once we finish with all the maneuver and fire, he moves into the fire resolution phase. You resolve the fire which you experienced. Then you have assault. Assault occurs when there's a unit in the enemy hex, like a close combat. You then have the mortar fire adjustment phase. You remove any mortar markers, mortar direct fire markers, the red markers, any smoke markers. You determine if you're going to get your mortar recovered or available. You determine whether or not you can extend your fire. Again, fire can only be extended once.
Okay.
Once that's complete, you do time lapse. You determine how much time has lapsed for the game turn. And then you clean up, you reset your counter orientation, etc. That's the game turn. Was that helpful?
Yes, definitely. The question about time. Time is measured in minutes. How long does a German player have to win?
Okay, in the first mission, this mission, if we were playing the whole mission from beginning to, we started the mission, I think the victory condition is 30. So the German, and this is not the mission, I just set this up, but if you read the mission 1, the German player has 30 minutes. If he can complete, now that time, so let me back up a minute. Time is just one factor in the victory conditions. The casualties is another factor. Each step loss, so your squads are 2-step units. All other units are single step. Leaders don't count because they're not combat units. So in this particular mission, only the squads, which are 2 steps, and the machine going 1 step, are in play because they're the only combat units. Each step loss is basically equivalent to 3 minutes in time, roughly. So for example, let's say that in this particular mission, if the German can, well, in the original mission 1, the German wins if there's no American units within 2 hexes of the church at the crossroads. That's when it ends. Not so much at the end of the time, but that's when it ends. So let's now in this original mission, if the final score was less than or equal to 30, the German player would win. If it was 31 to 40, it would be a draw. If it's 41 or greater, the German player would lose. So to explain that, let's say, for example, that the German accomplished the mission. There's no longer any American units within 2 hexes of the church. If that's the case, the mission ends on that turn. We'll assume that the mission ended, or the victory conditions were met, and there was and 25 minutes had lapsed, but the German player had lost 2 more steps than the American player. So in that case, you would add 6, 3 for each step to the final score, or to the time, which would be 25 plus 6 would give you 31. So the final score would be 31. So the German barely missed a victory, so he needed a 30 or less. He ended up with a score of 31. Let's say that this time lapse at the end of the mission was 25, but the American player had lost 1 more step than the German. Then the German would get to subtract 3 from the time, which would be 22.
Okay.
So the final score would be 22 in that case, where the German would win. So victory conditions is based on the amount of time it took for the German player to achieve his objective and the difference in the casualties. Does that clarify that?
And how many scenarios are included in the base game here?
There'll be probably, I'm guessing, 12 to 16 small to medium size. There'll probably be another 2 to 4. Maybe we'll say 12 small to medium. There may be 4 larger missions, multi-map larger missions, and then there will be kind of there'll probably be 1 or 2 operations, or like if you're an ASL player, it'd be like a mini campaign.
Okay.
There'll be a couple of operation type missions. In addition, there will be do your own missions. So there'll be quite a number of options relative to missions in the initial module.
What's the the playing time average? Just what's the average time on a small scenario?
What's the average time on a small scenario? This mission, if we played it from scratch, and again, I just set this up as demonstration, so I didn't actually start the whole mission. You could probably play this. 2 experienced players should be able to play this in an hour or hour and a half.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. TC Reed asked the question: is it just going to be infantry?
The question is just
TC Reed asked the question, is it just going to be infantry?
no. This is going to include infantry, armor. You've seen the only artillery in the game is going to be mortars because at the company level, that's about what we're dealing with. But there's armor. I don't have any air combat at the time. You certainly could, not combat, but air support on a platoon and company scale was pretty rare. Not to say that it couldn't be a random event. But no, this will include armor. Should I do another turn?
We're kind of running low on the time here. I think that this is a really good intro to the game. So why don't we go ahead and see if there's any other questions, and then I can go ahead and wrap up the recording.
Any further questions, please feel free to ask.
Oh, I know one. How many maps?
In the initial module, there will be 6 double-sided 11 by 17 maps. So in essence, there will be 12 maps.
All right, and this is up for pre-order right now. I don't remember the cost on it. Do you happen to know what it retails for, the pre-order price?
I'm going to guess. Seemed like I thought it was $38, but they should check on the site to see.
Okay, I'm checking it now. It is $38. Wow, that's a really good price. And as of right now, it has a number of pre-orders. It's sitting in at 466 orders, so we're getting close to 500. It's pretty good value for someone that wants to play a fast, tactical World War II game without, heavy rules weight, like ASL or one of the other tactical systems. And this definitely has an interesting premise of action-reaction.
Definitely.
There'll be numerous. I mean, like most games at tactical level, there'll be further modules. Certainly, we're looking at the Russian front, North Africa, Italy. We'll look at doing some historical as well. I mean, it's pretty endless opportunities or options relative to the game. I think so. There'll be a lot of map options, and it's you can play shorter ones as you begin to piece together larger engagements. I think the counter mix will allow you to have an infantry battalion for the Americans consisting of 3 companies of infantry, a company of tanks, and all of kind of assortment of support weapons, be it M10 tank destroyers, any tank guns, infantry guns, etc. For the Germans, their battalion consists of 2 infantry companies. They've got an engineering platoon, again, assortments of supportive weapons, 88s, Stugs, etc. As far as the armor, I'm sticking with most of the most common armor at this time. Certainly Sherman 75, 76s, M10 tank destroyers, half-tracks. Germans, you've got the Panzer IV, which was the most common tank. Tigers,
mostly
Panthers,
Shermans in the module here.
Stugs, Stug 105,
Germans,
half-tracks,
Panthers,
trucks,
fours,
infantry guns,
Tigers.
Black guns, black half-tracks, etc. So it's a pretty good mix. First question. In playtest, I have to play it solo quite often. I mean, it's better to have a player, but it plays pretty good solo because there's a lot of randomness in the game. As far as Germans, if they hadn't rolled an 8 to 10, okay, for each company that you activate, you get to roll once to see if you can get a combined activation, which allows you to activate two platoons as if they were one. If you're not successful in a combined activation, you will activate one platoon at a time. So you'll activate a platoon, conduct all your actions. The enemy player will react. You will react back. You will react until there's no longer reaction. Once that's done, you now activate the second platoon, and you do all the actions with it, and then there's reactions back and forth. So basically, it's a simple action cycle or loop. Generally, you will activate a platoon. You'll conduct your actions. There'll be reaction then by both players. Once that's complete, then you activate the next platoon. The key thing about reaction is this. If you're reacting, if you can't see an enemy unit conduct an action in front of you, and you're the non-active player, in other words, you did not win the initiative, you won't be able to move. So it's feasible that the Germans, if he used his cover correctly, could maneuver closer to your lines and you never get a shot, unless you actually had a line of sight against one of his maneuvering units. Leaders. Leaders are quite important here. First, they add +1. If you're in assault or close combat, you get 1 for the leader. When a unit is trying to recover, such as a disrupted second squad here, if the leader's in the hex, then he will subtract 1 from the die roll on his recovery, so it helps units recover. If he is in the same hex in fire resolution, as in the case here back with Murphy and the 3rd Squad, if he is in the hex at the time of fire...
Sorry about the lag, guys. There's nothing I can do about it.
Resolution, and he will increase that, or he would subtract 1 from the die roll, in other words, helping that squad survive the fire. And another important aspect, which in mortar, if you're calling in fire support, the hex that you place the spotter marker, okay, which is this unit here, the hex you place him in, that hex has to have a good order unit, and it's going to trace back to the leader of that platoon, and that leader has to be in good order. So if that leader is disrupted, the line of communication back to the mortar is disrupted, and he would not be able to call. So the leader is important. If you lose a leader, he becomes a casualty. He goes on the game track, and you would place that, for example, here, if the marker was on 2, you would place him 5 ahead. And that means it's going to take 2 or 3 turns before another leader someone else within that platoon has stepped forward. If you don't have a leader on the board, you can't activate. All you can do is react, no matter whether you're the active player or the non-active player.
Thanks.
Any more questions?
Hey, Mike, it sounds real good.
Hey, Mike, it sounds real good.
Any more questions? TC, I appreciate you and Bruce participating. I'm not very good at narrative. This is the first time I've ever done this. You know, I would be available at some time, wanted to do a Vassal module. You can connect by phone. You know, any support, anybody decides you want to play a test, just please do contact me. And I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, maybe what you could do, Mike, is type your email address into the chat bar here on Vassals so that guys that would like to contact you about playtesting this would be able to do so.
I will do that.
Also, guys, I did shoot a video of this. I'm sorry it got off to kind of a late start. I was having some technical issues, but we captured most of this for folks. And I'll try to get this up on GMT's YouTube channel here tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be running some more of these. And hopefully this will drum up some support for this new game. It's pretty cool. Thank you, Mike, for taking the time out and showing us your game design here. We look forward to seeing some more of this in the future.